Good afternoon. Welcome to the session with Winston called Automated Secure Access Control with Device Compliance in Jamf Connect ZTNA. And I totally said Zed because he's Australian, even though I'm American to be funny. Hope everybody had a good lunch. And is this thing on? Oh, okay. I think he turned me up. So introduce the session. I was being funny and said ZTNA because he's Australian, even though I'm American. But anyway, enjoy the session. And at the end, we'll have Q&A. I have the microphone, so raise your hand because we want to make sure we get that for the recording.
Cool. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, everyone. So, as Kerry introduced, I'm Winston. I'm actually from Australia, Sydney. So I'm actually a Jamf security sales engineer, focusing, as you can tell, security. So for today, we're going to be talking about the automating device compliance with ZTNA, Jamf Connect ZTNA. So for today's agenda, we're going to look at a couple of things. So we're going to first examine the current state of device compliance, kind of look back at why we need device compliance, what's the regulatory requirements of device compliance. We'll then explore understanding what is required to establish a device compliance baseline. Then we'll go into defining device compliance to achieve secure access, trying to put it into practice. We're going to show some demos on how it's kind of work with specifically Jamf-specific toolsets, Jamf Pro, as well as Jamf Connect ZTNA. Then finally, we will wrap it up on the future outlook of device compliance. So let's begin with the current state of device compliance. When we look at compliance in relation to cybersecurity, it ultimately means adhering to standards and regulatory requirements set forth by some agency, law, or authority groups. Organizations must achieve compliance by establishing a risk-based control and that protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. While it sounds like compliance is just another means to satisfy the ongoing needs and requirement of what government and authority dictates or enforce, there is still a shared goal and a unified mindset on the importance of compliance, and what it is to protect data. So whether it's sensitive corporate data that contains intellectual rights and ownership, or to handling of user data and the rights of end user. Compliance serves as a fundamental methodology framework in safeguarding data protection, which in most cases becomes a paramount factor to the success of our organization. While the core foundation of compliance focuses on that protection of sensitive data such as personal, financial, and proprietary information from unauthorized access, theft, or misuse, there's still various factors and considerations and guiding principles which also pertain to the success of incorporating a successful compliance framework and benchmark, such as mitigating risks. Compliance measures help to identify and mitigate potential cybersecurity risks and vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by malicious actors. Maintaining trust. Compliance needs to foster trust among customers, partners, and stakeholders by demonstrating a commitment to safeguarding the data and privacy. And then there's the legal and financial consequences. Non-compliance can result in severe legal and financial consequences, including fines, lawsuit, damage to reputation, and loss of business. While compliance doesn't necessarily mean security, the challenge and risk that does exist does become a common driver to evaluate and leverage security to achieve compliancy. So in short, compliance and security do kind of work hand in hand, so it's not one or the other. And from the studies carried out from Jamf Security's 360 annual report, we do see some quite interesting stats. So firstly, it's interesting to see 57% of end users believe malware doesn't exist on Mac. However, in reality, we found that that is obviously not true. 17% of malware sits in the Trojan category, which represents a significant risk. If you think about your teams who need to use a range of software, it's not always easy to know which apps are legitimate and So hackers are leading into particularly on Mac, which underscores not only the need for control and visibility to ensure applications are from a legitimate source. And finally, we find that 20% of organizations are impacted by malicious traffic of some sort in the last year, which includes malware downloads, as well as that C2C and data exfiltration use case. As we examine some of the key statistics on the current security landscape, let's look at what this ultimately means in compliance in 2024. Organizations of any size and industry will continue to be facing complex and evolving regulatory environments for cybersecurity. Government worldwide continue to recognize the economic national security risk of cyber threats and are responding with expanded laws and compliance mandates. We're likely to see expanded nationwide cybersecurity compliance requirements. Organizations of all size will need to commit resources to meet the new regulatory bar for technology, staffing, and reporting. As mentioned in my previous slide, while compliance does not equal to security, the fundamental aspect of both areas in most cases do coincide and share a common notion. And that is in 2024, we will push where more and more organizations will continue to align to specific compliance frameworks to reduce the cyber risk. Smart security teams in 2024 will view compliance as an opportunity, not just a checkbox exercise. So while we acknowledge the importance of compliance, it can inherently be quite challenging due to the various regulations, standards, and best practice that we need to be adhered to. So as mentioned before, compliance is not a checkbox exercise, but there are going to be complexities with compliance requirements, and it's always going to be evolving, posing challenges for organizations to keep up with that changing landscape. Most likely there will be resource constraints. So this could be limited resource, including budget, manpower, and expertise that can hinder organizations' ability to effectively implement and maintain compliance measures. And there's potentially going to be third-party dependencies. Organizations may face challenges in ensuring compliance throughout their supply chain and third-party vendors who can handle their data, as well as specific toolset and applications that are employed with the environment. With these challenges that exist, isn't just all gloom and doom. So there are various compliance frameworks that exist, and depending on whether organization entity operates or the type of industry or organization belong to, different approaches will be warranted. So since I'm from Australia, the first one that we focus heavily on is actually a framework provided by the Australian Signal Directorate. It's actually called the Information Security Manual. So it's a cybersecurity framework that organization can apply using the risk management framework to protect the information technology and operational technology systems, application, and data from cyber threats. And alongside ISM, we also have Essential Aid. So Essential Aid is an interesting it's less of a framework, it's actually a mitigation strategy provided to help organizations to achieve that high compliance. It's not by any means gonna lead you to be compliant, but it will help you achieve that mitigation strategy to prevent cyber threats from happening. But beyond what is available in Australia, I'll definitely stop talking about Australia now, there are global standards and ISO and other frameworks and compliance benchmarks such as ISO 27701, DISA, CIS, HIPAA, and NIST, and many, many more. There's no rule of thumb on which framework benchmark is better than the other. The use and applicability of each is going to be dependent on your specific use case, organization, industry, and persona. But one thing that will be crucial when aligning to any specific framework or benchmark is the inherent requirement of defined internal policies. Procedures to ensure consistent adherence to cybersecurity best practice across the organization. It is a joint effort to ensure that all relevant regulations, standards, and internal policies are adhered to effectively, involving the right people, compliance officers, legal team, HR departments, IT department, and senior management. Similarly, controls and enforcement of standards cannot be loose, where one individual will have different kind of controls and privilege. Everything needs to be standardized, and enforcement should be across the board, so there shouldn't be any exception. I know it's going to be a challenging one, but that's when you want to be compliant, you need to not look at compliance as just being an IT function. It's a governing control that requires organization-wide buy-in and approval from top down that should be enforced diligently, regardless of the user and the specific use case that they might have. So it's important to recognize that each organization will have its own unique sets of needs and requirements dictating what constitutes as compliant. Consequently, there isn't one-size-fits-all compliance baseline that covers all the control. However, we must consider the fundamental factors in environments adhering to the best practice of establishing a secure and compliant baseline. While no single compliance baseline can cater to every organization, there does exist some fundamental consensus of what constitutes as best practice. And although the baseline is a foundation and a starting point to ensure activities and compliance efforts are measured correctly, it's also equally important to consider the dynamic state of change and how evolving condition of compliance needs to be properly assessed on an ongoing basis. So with that said, security compliance and baseline is a very crucial foundation that requires careful consideration, as it defines a set of controls that your organizations have agreed to configure on your device, whether this is Macs having a specific security software installed, Mac having a firewall enabled, or a specific operating system installed on the device. Once in place, you need to continuously verify that this remains in place and this device remains compliant. This compliance scoring system is known as the security benchmark. Sounds simple enough, right? But bear in mind, careful and sound consideration will be required, especially with a large number of devices that could be deployed anywhere in the world. So we've kind of gone through a lot of the importance of compliance, how we can approach compliance, how we can kind of figure out the different metrics and capabilities. Let's actually put everything into practice and use the tools that I mentioned at the start to actually simulate how we can enforce that compliance control within a working environment. So within Jamf, we have various vendors that already have solutions that offer unique workflows to achieve that desired compliance state. So we have Microsoft conditional access using device compliance, using the information that is fed through from Jamf inventory information through smart groups that can be fed directly to Microsoft Entra ID to define whether a device is compliant. We got Google Beyond Corp Enterprise Context-Aware Policy, allowing Jamf to share determined compliance state with Beyond Corp and in turn restrict access based on that privilege control. We also have Okta Identity Threat Prevention, which is a unique device-level management of risk and compliance information to Okta in real time, which in turn helps inform how Okta should handle login and active session given to users' device posture and health, ultimately helping to protect organizational data. And we also have AWS Verified Access. It allows Jamf to act as an access provider to define a set of policy that must be met before an end user gains access to an AWS environment. Each of these integrations targets the essential need of only allowing trusted users from compliant devices to access organizational resources. But is this the end? How can Jamf further secure your perimeter beyond that discussed integration? So this is where we kind of go into what we offer as part of Jamf Pro, as well as Jamf Security Cloud that services our Jamf Connect ZTNA solution. So Jamf Pro will undoubtedly be your device management platform and foundation. It will handle your end-to-end management of iOS, macOS devices, as well as Vision Pro, to ensure that correct applications are deployed, OS is up to date, and the correct restrictions and configurations are in line. With Jamf Pro, you also obviously got the smart group to define and be able to apply those controls to your specific use case and personas. Then in the middle, we have what we call the Jamf Security Cloud. So powering our Jamf Connect ZTNA, we can securely access your core SaaS-based application or on-premise-based application. That will then allow us to using split tunneling technology to access those specific resources. But as you can see, these are all kind of separate components. How do we kind of put everything together or use the technology that's available in Jamf to make this more seamless? So this is where UEM Connect within Jamf Security Cloud really shines. So with UEM Connect, it is a capability in Jamf Security Cloud that allows us to sync device inventory information and groups from Jamf Security Cloud, from Jamf Pro to Jamf Security Cloud. This allows us to reuse device groups as well as infrastructure within Jamf Pro to expedite the deployment of Jamf Security Cloud-based security solutions such as Jamf Connect ZTNA. UEM Connect also allows us to apply conditional access to the device within the UEM solution based on the information that Jamf Security Cloud has detected. So what you will notice is access to business application will be the same. Devices will create a per tunnel application access to your specific SaaS-based solutions or on-premise-based solution. But it doesn't just stop there. This is where we have additional capability within UEM Connect that really stands out. We have a webhook API capability. When a device falls into a specific smart group in Jamf Pro, it will actually communicate to Jamf Security Cloud to move the device out of the corresponding group. So with this, any new or active connection to secure resources that leverages Jamf ZTNA tunnel will be automatically terminated and restricted for users. The access restriction can also be combined with your existing device compliance workflow, such as Microsoft conditional access, to provide you that tighter control of when a device is non-compliant, they shouldn't be accessing those specific resources. Now, we've kind of seen how the infrastructure kind of works. Let's actually put it into practice. Let's actually configure this setting. So what we have here, let me play that video, is me actually setting up the different type of smart groups within Jamf Pro. One thing you'll notice while I'm setting up these smart groups, I'm using the inventory information to define my device compliance. So there's actually 3 different criteria that I've kind of selected. That includes Jamf Protect being installed and active, ViaVault is enabled, and OS version is actually running on the latest version. But what you'll notice is I'm actually cloning each of these smart groups and making an adjustment to each of these criteria. So I think everyone knows within security, there's always low severity, medium severity, and high severity. I think when we look at compliance or the compliance setting of your device, we should also consider that there is a different severity level for your device compliance. So what I'm doing here is actually using these rules that we have to subjugate what is a low compliance device, what's a medium compliance device, and a high compliance device. The terminology or the wording can change, but it's to give you more flexibility in structuring who should have access and what resources should be governed when they fall into each of those groups. Again, any of these criteria that I use and establish are just examples. We can use any of the inventory information within Jamf Pro to make that different structure for your device groups and device compliance groups. Once the smart groups are created in Jamf Pro, we're also going to do the same and create the device groups directly in Jamf Security Cloud. So in Jamf Security Cloud, I've created pretty much the same naming convention, so it's easier. Like both the system will have the same naming, so it's easy to map them up. So once the groups are created, this is where that UEM Connect capability really comes into place. So I already have it pre-configured here to connect with my Jamf Pro instance. But what you will notice is there's something known as group membership mapping. So what we're doing here from a top-down perspective is setting up the highest severity risk group, which is evaluated from the top, to match to the specific group in Jamf Pro. The reason why you want to have the high severity group evaluated first is when a compromise or a device is not actually compliant, you always want it to be the first one to be evaluated. And in most cases, your device shouldn't be on that high group if it's in a compliant state with the right restrictions and settings enforced. Cool. So while on this UEM Connect screen, there's also additional settings that you'll notice. So there's actually a webhook token. The webhook token is what we're going to be using to create the webhook directly in Jamf Pro to automatically move the devices to that correct group to restrict that access. So I've kind of covered it up here, but once you have that webhook token, from Jamf Pro, you'll navigate back to Settings, Global Webhook. We'll be creating a webhook with the token that was obtained from Jamf Security Cloud UEM Connect. We're going to be entering a couple of different type of information here. We do have a endpoint API used by Jamf Security Cloud for that webhook to communicate to. We're going to then insert a header authentication with that specific webhook token. And then we will set the parameter as webhook event as smart group computer membership change. And then finally, we'll target the group that we want that specific webhook to target. So in this case, we're going to be replicating the same 4 webhooks for that low, secure, medium, and high severity device compliance group. With everything all set up, let's see what the end user experience will actually look like. So in this scenario here, me as a user, let's say I've been on holiday for 4 weeks, we haven't logged on to our machine. But in this case, once I log on, I actually receive a notification. This notification that you see is actually built off Swift Dialog. It's indicating to me that my device is actually not satisfying one of my device compliance. And that specific rule is indicating that my operating system is actually out of date in the 4 weeks that we've been offline. So, yep, I'll just leave that on the screen. Yep. Me being an end user, right? Okay, I shouldn't, but in this case, I decided to ignore it and press OK. So once I press OK, I actually do get redirected to self-service to indicate that there is a remediation workflow I should be enforcing. But hey, you know, I need to get back to my work. It shouldn't really block me from doing anything, right? So from here, I open a browser and try to access Microsoft 365. So straight away, there's one thing that I will mention. I do have SSO extension enabled. That's why when I do try to log in, it will automatically sign me in. But as you can see, with Microsoft conditional access in place, I'm actually being blocked and indicate that because my device is non-compliant, I'm not able to access Microsoft. I think it went pretty quick as well, but I tried to close the browser, reopen the browser, open the tab to try accessing again, but I still get the same restriction screen. So how does this all kind of happen? So kind of going back to the same infrastructure diagram that I mentioned, right? We're going to kind of step through how everything kind of works out here. So when the user first logs in using Jamf Connect, we do an inventory sync directly through Jamf Pro. Jamf sees that my OS is not on the latest version and automatically assign me to that low severity smart group that I've created. This then triggers that notification event that is created through that Swift Dialog prompt that we saw. Then a subsequent Jamf Pro webhook API is triggered that sends a signal to Jamf Security Cloud using that UEM Connect, moving me to a corresponding group in Jamf Security Cloud. And because I'm part of that group actually doesn't have access to Microsoft 365. So what happens here is any time I try to create a tunnel, that tunnel doesn't go through our ZTNA cloud infrastructure. And combining it with Microsoft's conditional access, where I use a trusted location with a trusted IP. What is actually happening is because it's not coming from the dedicated IP that I wanted to go through, Microsoft says, hey, you're not part of the right group, so we're not going to allow you in. So we block the users from accessing. So it's a combination and combining both what Jamf Connect ZTNA can provide, but also what Microsoft can also extend with that conditional access policy. Now, back to me as a user, I still don't believe I can't get access, so I'm just going to go reboot my device. You know, the most simple IT trick, yeah? So after rebooting my device, I actually do pay attention a bit more this time. So again, the notification actually does appear after I log in when it mentions my device is actually non-compliant. Just wait for it. So this time, actually pay attention to the prompts, the information. It actually already informed me that my access is restricted. But this time, in the self-service option, I do actually proceed with the upgrade. So we're just going to speed through the OS upgrade here. So once the device is actually finally updated, I actually go through the same, actually log back into the device. So it goes through the same workflow that we discussed. Because the device doesn't satisfy that device compliance, the webhook will actually trigger in the back end to put the device back to a secure device group. There's a couple of checks that I do as a user to kind of confirm that my device is actually up to date. So I go to system settings to check if my device is actually up to date. But also, with Swift Dialog, I also created a self-device compliance check that I use to actually see and confirm that my device is actually compliant. Sweet. My device is compliant. Now I try to open a browser and try to access Microsoft 365 again, and I'm allowed access. So the demo that we went through can function both as a standalone workflow without any additional integration with cross-vendor solution, but at the same time, it can also be employed with all the different type of compliance technology provided by Microsoft, Google, AWS, and Okta to give you that extensive workflow. So everything I went through is actually going to be provided in both a step-by-step instruction on the documentation of how to set up Jamf Connect ZTNA, but the one on the right, I hope it's on the right, is actually a white paper that goes through that whole step-by-step configuration that we just went through, but in more detail. It'll give you some, let's say, idea of how you can structure your device compliance group, how to use the Connect, how to use the webhook API call. So yeah, I'll put it on for a sec so you guys can take the QR code.
You need to choose a plan to activate the QR code.
So that is not good. I will try to get that information back out for everyone. Reach back out to me to get that QR code. Apologies for that. While we went through part of the workflow that encompassed the concepts of management and CTNA, this is all part of Jamf's approach of Jamf's trusted access. So Jamf Trusted Access is a methodology that combines the elements of management and security from Jamf solutions to truly deliver a unified experience in managing Apple device ecosystem. Trusted access, in short, means authorized users on enrolled devices that are both secure and compliant can have access to sensitive data. Whether you utilize Jamf Stack or integrate with some of your existing management and security, trusted access is the best way to simplify and secure Apple at work. Now, seeing the possibility that can be achieved with that enhanced integration between Jamf Pro and Jamf Security Cloud, let's kind of examine some additional use case and consideration that should be taken into account when attempting to attain that high level of device compliance and maturity. So as everyone kind of seen at the main keynote, so we're obviously releasing and streamlining the capability of allowing management and compliance to meet at center stage. So we got the compliance benchmark. So with this new compliance module, it will allow admins to easily define the compliance needs for the device, understand and audit their current compliance status, and enforce compliance controls and signal for non-compliance risks. The embedded solution will be easier for admin to do similar workflow as what I've done, but also give you more granular visibility. Secondly, we'll continue to see further adoption of cloud identity provider. I think most people's already on that journey, already fully adopt a cloud identity provider. But the whole purpose here is to leverage modern authentication for device and application access, allow privileged access and context-aware control and enforce additional control for the use of multi-factor authentication. Other considerations that might, well, this is actually part of my presentation, is the transition to ZTNA. The reason why I kind of left this as a consideration is I know not everyone is evaluating ZTNA, but it will become a factor in front of a lot of decision makers' mind that transitioning to ZTNA will be the pertinent route for organizations to be safe and secure. So this is mainly due to evolving risks, making legacy trust model ineffective, but zero trust principle of least privilege, access, continuous authentication, and strict inspection will become critical. Technological advances will make zero trust deployment actually a reality, as hopefully when we went through the demo, it actually showcased how simple it is to actually enforce those controls. But there is, hopefully, afterward, I will provide the right link for everyone to actually look at the step-by-step instruction as well. We're also going to see an increase of device insight, whether it's governance, security audit, post-incident analysis, and much more. There'll be a growing need for collection of meaningful insight, proactively monitor and detect threats on macOS in the environment, whether it's using insight, visibility, telemetry. These are all key considerations that we need to consider. And this allows us to have a better understanding of our system, our network, and the user activity, but also it will all give our security team the mechanism to apply automation to define additional controls to safeguard the actual device. Finally, beyond that visibility aspect of that telemetry insight, we also want to have more granular insight on application. So vulnerability reporting will be a key metric here, understanding what applications and what known CVE or common vulnerability exposures are expected on the device, so you can apply the correct controls and process in place. Ultimately, it's the main focus of improving security control, and the enforcement of advanced workflows based on these risk elevation will be the key consideration here. Finally, to kind of close off today's session, I strongly believe that adopting a holistic approach to cybersecurity compliance encompasses people, process, and technology. Aligning with organizational objective and risk appetite will be critical for all business. There'll be a need for regular risk assessment. Again, it's not going to be just a checkbox exercise where you do it once and set it again. This is going to be something that needs continuous reiteration and continuous improvement across the organization, buy-in from top down to apply the correct methodology across the business. And any additional consideration and use of applicable solutions will be paramount based on the specific industry, persona, and use case. Revisiting the importance of device compliance, it is evident that this factor isn't transient, rather it is persistent necessity as long as organizations embrace technology. Moreover, it's crucial to recognize that compliance standards will evolve alongside emergence of new tools and solutions. Therefore, it is essential to remain vigilant and adaptable, ready to embrace any new strategies and approach as part of the changing landscape in security and device compliance. Thank you very much, I think. Yeah, we're open to Q&A. I can't really see what.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. Regarding the inability to to be compliant, triggering an access change, that relies on your inventory in Jamf Pro, which can be a delay of up to, say, 24 hours or something, depending on how you have your inventory collection set up. How do you see that needing to change to try and make that more real-time detection of those compliance changes?
It's definitely, you're correct on that. There's obviously a requirement on the inventory information to define whether a device falls into those specific groups. to then block access. I think one thing that also extends on top of that we went through is the companion capabilities. So as I mentioned, there was the Okta identity threat protection. That is a capability built in with the IDP. So you can use a balancing combination of both that network security control with that active session control with IDP to actually then garner that, kind of block that access and active connection. So I guess in a perfect world scenario, there's going to be other components that will help you build out that like future state workflows. But for this is to kind of achieve and emulate what we can already do. Because a lot of the time, if you look at the Microsoft device compliance, it's also be basing on the device inventory control and the sync between Microsoft Entra ID. So we're just emulating that experience, but with our CTNA module.
Thank you. I see us going down a path where we'd integrate something like this, and then our cyber teams come to us and say, okay, now why aren't we inventorying every hour, every device?
Yeah, it's always a tricky one.
Cheers.
Thank you. We'll pass the mic, sorry.
I'm just wondering if you can leverage DDE for that. In other words, get the inventory updated much quicker through DDE.
I'll need to get back to you on that one first, and I'll definitely double check on that, yeah.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. To be honest, I'm a bit surprised by the approach that you take on leveraging on security groups or smart computer groups in Jamf. What we do is actually use the security cloud to set the security levels, like the low, medium, high, based on platform as well, because it all has to do with the agent that's on the client. And what if you install the agent on a laptop from a freelancer, for example, that needs access from their personal device or their own device? So as well with compliancy, let's assume that the device is not up to date or does not meet the security settings that you set in Security Cloud. Those are not reflected in the Jamf Trust application, where you would expect them in order that the user can take action. Because if they are in Jamf, I can imagine you can take action on that to remediate the issue. But how do you do that on devices that only have the agent installed?
So the specific workflow I went through, it's kind of a snippet, but I do get the context about elevating the agent itself. There are actually some additional documents that I've been working on to actually elevate not just using smart groups. We can use the webhook to actually trigger a risk signal elevation through the agent. So there's definitely something that we can do. I think this a specific approach I went down was just to show a possibility. There's going to be a lot more capabilities that can be built out using this as kind of like that foundation to begin with.
So you say this would be the foundation to begin with?
So this is just a starting foundation, which you can have other stuff within the Jamf ecosystem. So we do have Jamf, I don't know if you played around with Jamf routines, that actually allows us to communicate with Jamf Security Cloud to elevate that severity risk signals directly on the agent device as well.
True, but still you have external devices that are not in Jamf that you cannot manage. So as well for mobile devices, for example, let's say you have Android that you want to give access through ZTNA. You cannot take action on those. So that all relies on Jamf Security Cloud. So I don't understand why you don't approach it from the Security Cloud and based on the feedback to the agent.
Yeah. Okay.
This is just my take out, but I'm a bit surprised about this approach. Sorry.
Yeah, I guess my specific approach that we looked at for this automating compliance with Jamf Connect ZTNA, I was more focusing on that, let's say, organizationally owned device. But as you mentioned, there's also going to be that external contractor, third-party users that might not be managed. So that's definitely one of the consideration, and it definitely makes sense. It's a very valid question, and yeah, I'll definitely have a think about that one for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Ooh. Thank you very much, guys.